She was 19, standing outside a locked door that used to be her home, with a bag in her hand and nowhere left to go. That was the night she spent her last $1 on something broken, something no one else wanted. She didn't plan it. There was no careful thinking, no backup plan waiting. Just a single coin in her pocket, cold against her fingers. The sign was barely hanging. Ruined bookstore for sale. $1. It looked like a mistake. The windows were dusty. The wood around the door was cracked. Inside it was nothing but darkness. Anyone else would have walked away. But she didn't. Maybe because she had already lost everything. Maybe because when you have nothing left, even something broken feels like hope. So she pushed the door open, and with that $1 she bought a place that had been forgotten by everyone. But what nobody knew was something inside that quiet, ruined space had been waiting for years. Not just hidden, but protected. As if it was meant to be found by someone exactly like her. Before we go deeper into this story, if something here already feels familiar to you, take a moment to subscribe, and tell me where you are listening from. Because sometimes stories travel further than people ever can. Her name was Mira. She used to believe in small, simple things. The sound of pages turning, the smell of old paper, the quiet comfort of sitting beside her grandmother. Her grandmother had a small wooden shelf by the window, filled with books that were older than both of them. Every evening she would sit there, reading slowly, her voice soft and steady. Mira would rest her head on her lap, listening. Sometimes she didn't even understand the stories, but she understood the feeling. Warmth, safety, belonging. Her grandmother used to say something she never forgot. Books remember people, even when people forget themselves. Back then, those words felt gentle. Later, they would feel like truth. After her grandmother passed away, the house changed. Her father stopped speaking much. The walls felt colder. The silence felt heavier. Arguments came quietly at first, then louder, then constant. Until one night, it ended. Not with a scream, not with a fight, just a door closing, and her father saying she had to go. No explanation, no goodbye, just emptiness. That was how she ended up on that street, with $1 in a bag that held everything she had left. The bookstore became her shelter. At first, it didn't feel like one. The air inside was thick. Dust floated in slow, quiet patterns. The shelves leaned like they were tired. Books were scattered everywhere, some torn, some forgotten. But there was something about it, something familiar, like a memory she couldn't fully reach. She started cleaning the next morning, slowly, carefully, as if the place could feel her hands. Days passed like that. She would wake up on the wooden floor, wrapped in an old cloth she found, and begin again, wiping, sorting, stacking books one by one. At night, the silence returned, and so did the loneliness. There were moments when she questioned everything. Why did she buy this place? What was she even trying to do? Who was she without anyone to call her name? But still, she stayed, because leaving would mean admitting she had nowhere else to go. One evening, after a long day of cleaning, she noticed something strange. At the back of the store, behind a shelf that seemed heavier than the others, there was a small gap. It didn't belong there. The wall behind it looked uneven. She stepped closer. Her heart moved faster, not from fear, but from curiosity. She pushed the shelf gently. It didn't move, but something told her to try again. So she did, harder this time. The wood scraped against the floor with a low, slow sound, and then it shifted, just enough. Behind it was a narrow door, almost invisible. Her breath caught. Why would there be a door here? Who hid it? And why? She stood there for a long moment, listening to the silence, to her own heartbeat. Then she reached for the handle. It was cold, like it hadn't been touched in years. The door opened slowly, revealing a small back room. Dark, still, untouched. She stepped inside. Each step was careful, almost respectful, as if she was entering someone else's memory. There was a table, an old wooden chair, and a small chest resting against the wall. Simple, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like it was waiting. She moved toward it, her hands trembling slightly. The lid was locked, but the lock was weak, old. With a little effort, it opened. The sound echoed softly in the room. Inside were 3 things, placed carefully as if they mattered. The first was a journal, its cover worn, edges faded. She picked it up gently. The pages smelled like time, like years of quiet waiting. The second was a small cloth pouch. Inside it were a few pieces of jewelry. Not extravagant, but valuable enough to matter. Enough to survive. The third was a photograph, black and white. A woman standing in front of the bookstore, smiling softly. Her eyes calm. Familiar in a way that felt strange. And beneath the photograph, a letter, folded carefully. Mira sat down slowly. The room felt smaller now, closer. She opened the letter, her hand steady but her breath not. The writing was neat, soft. It began simply. "If you are reading this, it means you found the room." She paused. Something about those words felt personal, like they were meant only for her. The letter spoke of the woman in the photograph. Her name was Lila. She had owned the bookstore many years ago. It was never just a business to her. It was her home, her escape, her way of holding on to something when life felt too heavy. She wrote about loss, about losing her family, her partner, her sense of direction. She wrote about nights spent alone among books, talking to silence, searching for meaning. Then she wrote about hope, about believing that one day someone would walk into that store, not to buy something, but to find something they didn't know they needed. She explained the chest. The journal held her thoughts, her lessons, her mistakes. The jewelry was not wealth. It was survival, for someone who needed a second chance. And the photograph was a reminder that even strangers can leave something behind for someone they will never meet. The final lines were softer, almost like a whisper. "If you are here, you are not lost. You are just early in your becoming." Mira didn't move for a long time. The room felt warmer. Not physically, but something inside her shifted. For the first time since she left home, she didn't feel abandoned. She felt seen. Days changed after that. She didn't rush. She didn't try to sell the jewelry immediately. Instead, she used a small part of it carefully, to fix the door, to repair a few shelves, to bring life back into the store slowly. She read the journal every night, learning from Lila's words, about patience, about quiet strength, about building something not for the world, but for yourself. Weeks passed, then months. People began to notice. A light inside the bookstore, a door that was now open. At first, just one person walked in, then another. They didn't come for anything special, just curiosity. But they stayed. Some talked, some just sat quietly. Mira didn't force anything. She simply existed in that space, and somehow that was enough. The town slowly began to accept her. A woman who sold tea brought her a cup one evening without asking for money. A child left a drawing on the counter of the bookstore with sunlight around it. Small moments, but they mattered. The bookstore became more than a place again. It became a feeling, and Mira began to feel like she belonged somewhere. Not because she found money, not because her life suddenly became easy, but because she found purpose. She started writing, too, late at night, sitting at the same table in the back room, adding her own words to the story, her own truth, her own healing. Years later, the bookstore still stood. Not perfect, not grand, but alive. And inside that small back room, the journal remained, now filled with 2 lives. 2 strangers connected by something invisible, something quiet, something real. Mira would sometimes read the letter again, just to remind herself that not all gifts come from people we know. Some are left behind, waiting for the right moment, for the right person. And sometimes those gifts don't just change your life. They help you become someone you were always meant to be. Maybe that's what the bookstore really was. Not broken, not ruined, just waiting. Like a heart that hasn't learned how to beat again until someone touches it gently and stays. Before you leave, tell me something. What has a stranger ever left behind that changed you in a way you didn't expect? And if this story stayed with you, subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest stories are the ones that heal us the most. Take care.